some big deals getting signed. The biggest of the bunch was TJ Watt, who at 30 years old, remember last week we discussed it, why I was a little worried about this Steelers team, because your three best defensive players are all on the wrong side of 30. Well, that didn't stop the Pittsburgh Steelers for giving him a 4-year, $123 million extension. The cap hits as it stands this season, $23.3 million. Very stomachable. Very easy to take on if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a big reason why they wanted to get this deal done. Next year, though, $42 million. That's at age 32. Year after that, $42 million. And then at 34 years old, if he stays ageless, TJ Watt will make $46 million. Not make, but the cap hit will be $46 million in 2028. Realistically, it is a 3-year deal, though. That last season kind of very much a team option-ish sort of structure. But he will be on the roster for the next 3 years because it will cost them more to cut him at any point in time than it will to have him on the roster any of those years. So $23 million, $42 million, $42 million over the next 3 seasons. If you look back to JJ, this was kind of when the wheels fell off, right? He ended up retiring at, I believe, at 33 years old was when he hung it up. Had a lot more injuries early on in his career than TJ Watt, but obviously when you get to that age, they just don't heal the same way. So a big risk, but obviously a franchise cornerstone for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
First and foremost, TJ Watt, phenomenal football player, goes without saying, second fastest player to reach 100 sacks, I believe, in NFL history. The guy's unbelievable. And if you're a coaching staff, if you're upstairs in one of these buildings, you are dying to pay a guy like TJ Watt $40 million because you can keep that kind of character on your roster. You can keep that kind of leadership, that kind of production. What he does not only in the run game, but the pass game, obviously. We talked about his sack numbers, and he is just that energizer bunny on the defense. And he doesn't miss time. He doesn't miss sacks. And when he missed sacks, it's because he's going for strips and he's looking for the football. Best players I ever played against were the guys who are going after the ball. They're not going after the quarterback. That's what TJ Watt does, creates so many extra possessions. Look, $40 million, $42 million. It's the cost of doing business nowadays, baby. This league is growing all the time. I saw the female athletes from the WNBA with their shirts on that said, pay us what we deserve. I feel like if you really paid TJ Watt what he deserves, he'd be making $100 million a year with the money that the NFL brings in. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll say good on the Steelers for getting this done, because you would hate to spit on the end of this career. Really not the end of the career for TJ Watt, because you alluded to his brother being done at this point in time. But keep in mind, TJ went inside and played defensive tackle. He played over the guards,
City miles.
sometimes over the center. He had real pothole miles where TJ gets to play that edge, although he plays physically.
Yeah, and TJ, the way he plays, I'm not going to call him a finesse edge. That's like obviously disrespectful to say, but like he runs the hoop, man.
He's
gets
efficient.
The shot. He runs the hoop. He's not trying to overpower a guy who's 100 pounds more than him. He's trying to out-athlete him. And, obviously in the AFC North, you always have the conversation. Myles Garrett versus TJ Watt. Myles Garrett got $40 million a year. TJ obviously gets a little bit over $40 million a year. So the Pittsburgh Steelers fans get to push their chests out a little with the news of this deal. Obviously, I think we'd both say we'd rather have Garrett, but there's something about TJ Watt and the impact he makes, because he makes game-changing plays. Myles Garrett gets pressure on a more consistent basis. But TJ Watt, with the way he rushes the passer, and like I said, runs the hoop, he sneaks up on quarterbacks because he has such good bend at the top of the pocket. A lot of times when you see the defensive end go past you as a quarterback, you're like, okay, good. Once he leaves your line of sight,
that's when they step up and kind of tuck into that pocket. And TJ just lives with his hand right here, swatting at pecs and necks and everything.
His ability to bend and just get right back, even though he's behind you, just for a split second. Well, that's why he has 10 forced fumbles the past 2 seasons. And he also, makes picks, makes plays in the screen game. He is just that guy to where a lot of his impact is difficult to quantify. I remember, just as a Packers fan, when Clay Matthews moved from the edge to off-ball linebacker, you just kind of lost that, whatever that was, that 1 or 2 times a game, he was making a play that just no one else on the team would have made. Not a lot of edge rushers around the league just would make. And TJ Watt makes those plays, and those, are difficult to quantify when they happen. So obviously from a pure number standpoint, if he stays TJ Watt, well worth his deal. It is not even a debate. It's just crazy to see this number out there for a guy at his age. It's just a little unprecedented at this point.
CBS Sports football writer Brian DiArdo wrote in an article that he has TJ Watt as number 3 since the year 2000 for Pittsburgh Steelers players. And obviously Paul Malu's on there, Harrison's on there, Roethlisberger's on there. But it makes me think about if TJ Watt is still part of this thing, if they win a Super Bowl down the road here, does that launch him into top 3 all-time Pittsburgh Steeler because of what the Pittsburgh Steelers mean to football and their hard-nosed defensive identity and just how productive a guy like TJ is? He never opens his mouth. He is as blue-collar a football player as they come. And in the Three Rivers City, man, that's what it's all about. They got to just if you're going to build a statue of a player in Pittsburgh 5 years from now, it's going to be hard to argue not to put TJ Watt on it. And Uncle Terry, obviously, but I'm just talking defense here.
Just at least in my lifetime, if he goes 4 more years of this, I don't think it's really a debate.
Yeah,
I think he is. All right, another extension though. This one comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. George Karlaftis, obviously the first rounder 4 years ago.
The Greek Freak.
Well, he signs a 4-year extension. Not quite the 123 that TJ Watt got, but $93 million. A very fair deal for a guy who, no one's mistaking for TJ Watt. No one's mistaking for a top of the NFL sort of edge rusher. But what he does do is plays damn near every snap for the Kansas City Chiefs, can play both run and pass, and really isn't a liability or really doesn't make a lot of mistakes out there on the football field for Steve Spagnuolo defense, where that's kind of at a premium. So he was 13th in the NFL in pressures a season ago, 61 pressures, and this kind of puts him in that range of contracts throughout the league.
Hey, I love referencing our CBS sports writers, and Jordan Dajani pointed this out. So over the last 2 years, he's had 10.5 sacks and then 8 sacks this past season. And I talked about last year, I said, I think George Karlaftis could be an all-pro type player. And while he didn't meet that mark, he led the Chiefs in sacks. He's productive. And as a guy who grew up in a family of edge rushers and guys who play the defensive front, I know how important it is to get after the quarterback, even when you don't get sacks. Quarterback hits matter. 28 quarterback hits, tied with Myles Garrett and Leonard Williams for third most in the NFL. Furious George, the Greek Freak, as I call him, is a great complimentary piece to Chris Jones. He'll continue to find ways to win. I love this deal for them. It doesn't have 3 digits attached to it. 4 years, 2 digits. Get out of Dodge. Way to go, Brett Veach.
Yeah, the first of what should be a couple big contracts from that draft class, because obviously they got Trent McDuffie that season as well. But Karlaftis, this puts him 10th in the NFL in terms of money per year at that position. No one's saying he's the 10th best edge rusher, but he is a quality edge rusher and should be realistically productive over the course of that deal because he's still young, should be ascending as a football player. So a deal that had to get done for the Kansas City Chiefs. Last bit of news here before we get to this rookie draft. And we could touch on this as little or as much as we want to, but the NFLPA is officially in shambles. If you're in the news as much as the NFLPA is, you just have every single owner licking their chops about what they're going to do to them in the next negotiations. But now NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell resigns after misappropriations of funds, allegedly going on. Some things going on behind the scenes at the NFLPA, spending company money at strip clubs. One of the biggest there.
Wet in the beak.
Some things that, probably shouldn't have been doing.
That's not how an NFL man should behave.
Yeah. And then Jonathan Jones reports that J.C. Tretter, who was high up in the NFLPA as well, a lot of people thought he could be the next president. He resigns as well after numerous, I don't want to call it scandals, but numerous things he's been involved with. Obviously, people pointed to him for burying a lot of this collusion stuff that happened earlier this offseason, the non-disclosure agreement that they signed there. People blame him for saying that NFL players should fake injuries a year ago, and that actually ended up coming back to bite the NFLPA as well. So he's been in the mix with a lot of this. So a lot of turmoil with the Players Association here.
It's funny, and I don't know if this will answer any of your questions or your talking points, but when I was in the league, I always found it interesting that the guys that were required or wanted for leadership positions within each locker room. There's 32 locker rooms. You get an NFLPA representative out of 32 rosters. You get one guy that goes and reports to the higher in command. I found more often than not, it's not the guy that it probably should be. And a lot of these people sign up for these roles in order to get a pelt on the wall or, some sort of LinkedIn addition. I don't have a LinkedIn, but have you ever had a LinkedIn? It's like you can put things on there. The more things you do, this feels like a LinkedIn job, because during the season, a lot of these guys that should be in leadership positions are such great leaders that they're not concerned with that. They're concerned with football and they're concerned with their teammates. I think that obviously major change needs to happen, and there needs to be more visibility, and there needs to be obviously dozens less skeletons in the closet than there are currently. I feel bad that it was an offensive lineman that is the one that's being named and involved in this conversation. It sheds a bad light on guys like myself. But at the end of the day, we like to bury our homie's bones as offensive linemen. He can't help himself. And obviously there's a lot of pressure. You're dealing with, one of the largest businesses in the world, the NFL. You can be backed into a corner, I can imagine, in conversation. There's bullying, that kind of thing. And you don't even understand it's going on because these are such sharks. Look, I'm glad that we get 2 new hires here. And I hope that they take that process seriously. And more guys who have averted their gaze from this side of the league pay attention more.
Yeah, I remember being privy to some of the calls back in 2020, the last CBA negotiation going on, and just being very underwhelmed with the organizational structure and with the overall leadership and how it was being handled. I don't know if I've told the story on the pod or on any pod. I probably did back then, but I remember Russell Okung asking, this is when the Denver Broncos were getting sold. Russell Okung asked how much each player was going to get from the Broncos getting sold. He was curious.
How many Walmart gift cards?
He was disappointed to find out that that's not how they don't just get.
That's hilarious. Well, I give Russell credit. Speaking
I was going to say that wasn't, as far as dumbest questions asked, that wasn't amongst like the top 5. So
Russell has made out pretty well. And if you look at Bitcoin recently, Russell's doing really well. We laughed at Odell Beckham. I hope he didn't liquidate his Bitcoin. I hope he kept it.